There's a very simple reason why nearly all sales techniques, why nearly, despite spending billions per year on sales strategy and sales training, most sales is a low probability, confrontational, unpleasant conversational situation. And when you understand why this is, and you understand the solution, you can not only make a lot of money in sales very easily without any resistance, but you will enjoy the conversations. You will actually enjoy your sales job. You will enjoy talking to customers. You won't get that nervous feeling when you see a customer, I need to go push something on them. You'll think, aha, that's another cool person I can talk to and maybe create some kind of relationship. So what is the main reason why sales is so confrontational? What is the main reason why, despite spending billions per year on sales training, companies are teaching their employees the absolute wrong method? Well, it comes by understanding what happens internally when we make decisions. We are desire-seeking organisms. We are desire-seeking animals. The whole purpose of life is to go after and achieve desires. No matter how many desires you have, no matter how many desires you will achieve, there will always be more desires on the other side of that. But inside of our own minds, we think of desires in two metaphorical categories. The desires that we can achieve, the desires that seem easy to achieve, and the desires we have that seem out of reach. And the reason they seem out of reach, the desires that exist in this metaphorical out of reach category, is because we don't feel the agency or the congruence required to get those desires. In order to satisfy any desire, we need to feel a base minimum level of agency and a congruent level of agency. We need to feel like we are in control to get that thing. If we want something, but it feels out of our control, whether it happens or not, we don't feel agency. We need to feel agency. We need to feel congruent agency to pursue desires successfully. And so people that have long-term wishes that aren't really goals have problems setting goals because they don't really know how. They don't believe they can get there. It feels out of their control. Now, what does this have to do with sales? Well, agency means I'm in charge of my decisions. I'm in charge of what I do. I'm in charge of what I say. And in order to get something that we want, we need to feel like we're in charge of what's happening. We need to feel like we're in charge of doing what it takes to get that thing. So if you imagine somebody walking into a car lot, for example, they have a vague desire for a new car. Maybe they want a new car, maybe they don't. They're not really sure. Maybe they want an SUV, maybe they want a sports car. They're not really sure. They just have this kind of vague desire for maybe getting a new car. But in order to buy a new car, they need to feel a sense of agency. They need to feel like the benefits of the new car is going to outweigh the cost. And this has to be a decision made by them inside their own congruent agency state. But here comes this salesperson. And this salesperson is telling them why they should buy this car. They're using all these outside-in sales psychology techniques. They're using all these outside-in language patterns to kind of box the customer in and make them feel almost trapped in buying this car. And that is the opposite of agency. This is why most sales is so confrontational. The sales techniques that almost all salespeople use that are funneled through their ego is the arch enemy of individual agency. Sales techniques, as they're being taught to almost everybody in the world, are the arch enemy of individual agency because they are based on telling the customer what to do, by putting them in some kind of a box, by using these kind of double bind questions, by making them feel like they don't really have another choice other than to buy the product. Now, under this context, there are a couple ways that sales actually happen. One of them is just pure luck. Like you have somebody come into a car lot and they have a vague desire to buy the car. And then the salesperson comes up and gives them all these outside-in reasons why they should buy the car, but these reasons just so happen to match perfectly which already exists in the subconscious of the customer. So it feels like a perfect match. So it feels like it's an agency-driven decision, but it just so happens that the reasons given to the customer by the salespeople just happen to match what would needed to have happen inside them for the agency congruency or the congruent agency to drive them to make a decision. These are very, very rare, and they're based only on probability. These have nothing to do with the technique of the salesperson. The only other time when sales happens is when the salesperson kind of puts a lot of pressure on the customer. And now the customer has two choices. They can either be assertive and tell the salesperson, this isn't really what I wanted. I wanted something different. This is close, but it's different in these ways, and it's a little more expensive. Therefore, I'm going to have to say no. This is very, very difficult for most people. And the longer the salesperson talks, the more the customer feels almost an obligation to do something to reciprocate what the salesperson has been doing for the salesperson or the customer. So this is very, very hard. It's very, very hard to assert yourself calmly and rationally to a salesperson who spent the last hour pitching a product to you. So the alternative is to just buy the product to end this uncomfortable situation. Now, notice this is the same structure of police interrogations where people admit to doing things or confess to crimes they didn't do. It's such a long, very, very terrible situation. They could keep sticking to their guns and saying, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. But after a 16-hour interrogation where the suspect is being tag-teamed by detectives, they finally relent, and they, in their mind, in that decision, this is the lesser of two evils. This is the path of least resistance. They just say, okay, I did it. If I admit to the crime, can I at least go to sleep right now? And that's what happens. That's what causes false confessions. And it's the same dynamic that gets people to buy things that they didn't really want to buy. But the thing of it is our agency is so important to us. Our sense of agency, our sense of being in control is so important to our subconscious sense of self. Our subconscious well-being is we will reframe the situation in real time to believe it really was our choice. From a structural standpoint, you could either be assertive, which is very, very difficult, or you could buy the product, which is pretty easy, and it might not be what you want. But the longer this goes on, the longer this choice exists in your head, this one versus this one, you're going to start to convince yourself, you're going to start to reframe your own desires to believe that you wanted the product so you can get it out of there and feel like it was your choice. This is maybe how 5% of sales are made, or 5% of sales conversations are made. This is essentially the bulk of most sales. We have this need for an agency, a need for a congruent agency to make a decision, but then the salesperson comes in with all this very, very strong, very, very charismatic, very, very articulate, very, very well-calibrated, very, very psychologically rich techniques to get us to buy stuff, and it really just makes us reframe our own decisions while they're talking to us until we convince ourselves, I must have wanted this all along. But the deeper reason that people buy products like this is not because these are the real reasons. These are kind of coerced reasons, but they're tricking us into coerce ourselves into buying something, and then we go home and we have this new belief that I wanted to buy this car all along. This is why sales is such a high probability, low probability, high confrontational conversational structure. It's based on coercion, subconscious coercion, and it's based on relying on a certain small percentage of customers that will reframe their own decision-making process to make 5% of sales. And this is where most sales comes from. That small percent of people that are going to wither under pressure and do what the salesperson wants and then reframe their decision so they believe it was their choice. This is why sales is such a low probability, high confrontational conversational structure. So what's the answer? What's the solution? Well, the solution is to stop seeing the forest for the trees, to stop mistaking the forest for the trees. Now, what does this mean? Nobody will do anything unless they believe they're getting their needs met. Nobody will take any action unless they believe the benefits are greater than the cost. But here's the thing. If you look at the customer and you think, maybe we have a chance of a mutual beneficial relationship, maybe we won't. But the highest probability of a mutual beneficial relationship under very pleasant conversation is to stop telling them what they should do and just ask about what they want. Find out what they want. Find out why they came into your shop. Find out what they're hoping to get. Find out what their best case situation is if they imagine having the product in the future and they enjoy the product. What does that look like? How do they benefit? What are the benefits of having the product? Have they made any other decisions in the past that were similar to the one they might be making then? And if you build up their inner map, their inner desire map, if you find out exactly what they want, they will start to feel really happy about the conversation without any pressure, without any ego, without any outside-in techniques. And just find out what they want. And if you find out what they want, they will have a much higher probability of getting it from you. The structure is very, very simple. You see the customer, you ask what they want, you build out that inner representation as big as you can, as rich as you can, you pay attention to the things they say, and at the end of the conversation, if there is a basis for a mutual benefit, if you happen to have the product that satisfies their needs, you just describe the product in terms of what they just said about what they want. And that's a very easy sale. Now, what does this have to do with the forest and the trees? This is a metaphor I learned from this guy I used to work for, this guy that owned this solar panel swimming pool heating system. He would go in and talk to the customers, and all he would do was ask about what they wanted. Why did you buy the pool? Why are you thinking about paying for some system that will heat your pool? How do you know that's worth the money? How do you imagine using your pool 6 months in the future? If you buy this solar heating system, which is like 10 grand, and you're using it for 6 months, does it still make sense? You could use that 10 grand for a lot of other stuff. Does it still make sense to use that for the pool? And he would get their desire map as accurate as possible. And then, only then, would he say, well, what you say you wanted is kind of what we have. Maybe you should make a decision. It looks like we have what you want. What do you think? And he told me that most salespeople fail because they go into a conversation and they think, I need to convert this person. I need to pay my rent. I need to make my mortgage person. I need to sell, so I need to convert this person. And they make the decision that they're going to try to convert the person before they even find out what the person wants. On the other hand, if you go in there thinking, I want to find out what this person wants, and if there's a basis for a trade, then we'll make a trade. I want to find out what they want. I want to expand that map, their internal representation of what they want as much as I can. And if it matches our product, then I'll sell something. And when you see the whole forest, and you see each individual in the forest as a potential customer, and you only find out if they will be a customer by asking them what they want, then you have much higher conversions. If you see the whole forest and you just talk to people about what they want, you will have maybe 50% conversions. But if you see each tree and you think, I have to convert each person, you will be very confrontational. They will read this in your energy, and you only have about a 5% or less conversion rate. So when you see each potential customer as only a potential customer, and you get it straight in your mind that I want to find out what they want, and only if what I have is a match for what they want will I make a sale, that will increase your conversion significantly. And it will make the conversation much more pleasant. And just by simply asking about what they want, by taking the time to look inside their brain and finding out what they're hoping to achieve, by being interested in what they want and not what you think they should want, they will feel fantastic. And that itself will significantly increase their chances of buying your product. So think about this if you want to get into sales. Think about this if you are in sales. Look at the entire forest and look for people that want what you have. That will increase your conversions significantly. If you'd like to learn more, please check out the links below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.